Neville Goddard, Out of This World, Thinking Fourth Dimensionally, 1949. Oh, this is going to get good. Love it. 4D. All right, Chapter 1, Out of This World. And now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it is come to pass, ye might believe. John 14:29. Many persons, myself included, have observed events before they occurred, that is, before they occurred in the world of three dimensions. Since man can observe an event before it occurs in three dimensions of space, life on Earth must proceed according to plan, and this plan must exist elsewhere in another dimension and be slowly moving through our space. Interesting. Okay. There's a lot in that first paragraph that is very fascinating. Since man can observe an event before it occurs in three dimensions of space, life on Earth must proceed according to plan, and this plan must exist elsewhere in another dimension and be slowly moving through our space. You have our space, let's say you are here in three dimensions, and here you are, and I know we're going to be covering this here shortly, but I wanted to kind of give this as a kind of a concept. Let's call this 3D. Let's call this 4D. The shadow on the ground here, and I don't know how to do that. Let's say it's, well, that's going to be very difficult to draw a shadow, but let's for fun say that's the shadow on the ground. That's 2D. Okay? So 4D, you don't physically see it. You see 3D, but 3D is the shadow of your four-dimensional self, and 3D also casts a shadow in 2D, let's say on the ground, let's say you're outside in the sunlight. This one, as this sentence is saying, life on Earth must proceed according to a plan, and this plan must exist elsewhere in another dimension and be slowly moving through our space. So it's happening here, then it shows up here, is an after effect. The cause and reality is in 4D. When you make that impression on your subconscious, that is reality. That is 4D. If the occurring events were not in this world when they were observed, then, to be perfectly logical, they must have been out of this world. And whatever is there to be seen before it occurs here must be predetermined from the point of view of man awake in a three-dimensional world. Thus the question arises, are we able to alter our future? My object in writing these pages is to indicate possibilities inherent in man to show that man can alter his future, but thus altered, it forms again a deterministic sequence starting from the point of interference, a future that will be consistent with the alteration. The most remarkable feature of man's future is its flexibility. The most remarkable feature of man's future is its flexibility. It is determined by his attitudes rather than by his acts. The cornerstone on which all things are based is man's concept of himself. The cornerstone on which all things are based is man's concept of himself. And we know our self-concepts are within. We have all that is, I am God right here, and all of our self-concepts come from Him. We are of Him, whether I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm fat, I'm skinny, whatever the word you want to use this week, it doesn't make a difference. Here you are today in a self-concept. Here's a self-concept you desire to be. To make that change from this self-concept to that self-concept, you impress your subconscious and become objectified in the new self-concept, which incidentally does have a subconscious, of course. The cornerstone on which all things are based is man's concept of himself. Whatever man's concept is of himself, this is the cornerstone on which all things are based. He acts as he does and has the experiences that he does because his concept of himself is what it is. and for no other reason. Had he a different concept of himself, he would act differently. A change of concept of self automatically alters his future. And a change in any term of his future series of experiences reciprocally alters his concept of self. We're going to have to take some leaps here. He's talking about future, but I'm here to tell you there is no future. There's only now and now. This is where you are today. This is where you are tomorrow. But in reality, what he just said is that you, that new self-concept of you, also is the same energy as that old self-concept of you. It's actually sending back, if you want to play with the idea of linear as a past, the present, and a future, left, middle, and right. Past is on the left, middle's in the future. I'm sorry, middle's the present, and the right is the future. I just saw a video about a turtle. Fascinating. A turtle has on its back the 13 moons. I did not know this. We have a friend that has a turtle in their backyard, and it's a loving pet, and it has these divisions on the back of a turtle, has the 13 like little sections right in the middle of the turtle's back, and they represent the 13 moons of the year. A new moon is every 28 days, which in a year, 365 days, there's 13 moons. And around the outer edge of the turtle's back is 28 little divisions as well, which is very fascinating. I never knew that. Very fascinating. But the video I watched had, I'll put it in the description, had an old saying that a turtle, the tail was the past, the back is the present, and the head outstretched is the future. It makes good sense because this is leading the way. And that back there is where you were. Up here is where you're going. Right here is where you are. Similar concept. Here's where you were. Here's where you are, according to all that is, Him, God, in the present. All self-concepts are done. So how else are we supposed to look at this than with I'm currently here, but I want to be there. We use time like this to represent where I'm at, where I'm going to be, but in actuality, you'll never be there unless you're there now. You will never arrive unless you change that self-concept now, which actually literally means your self-concept is both. But when you put the feeling in this one, you arrive in that one, whatever the new self-concept is. Man's assumptions, which he regards as insignificant, produce effects that are considerable. Therefore, man should revise his estimate of an assumption and recognize its creative power. Very, very important point. A change of concept of self automatically alters his future, and a change in any term of his future series of experiences reciprocally alters his concept of self. All change takes place in consciousness. The future, although prepared in every detail in advance, has several outcomes. At every moment of our lives, we have before us the choice of which of several futures we will choose. At every moment of our lives, every moment. I mix my understanding that I've learned in the Seth material because with Neville material, because it's a large degree of this is understanding how time works and that it's all now. Everything is in one moment. I've said it a million times. If you're aware of the moment, then you don't have to be aware of anything else. It's becoming aware of the point you are right now. Moment, point, awareness. And if you're here where all consciousness is, aware of your moment point, you're in and now. Again, let me just bring this up. Look at children. Look at any children at play. They aren't thinking about past or future whatsoever. They're only captively activated and present in one place and space, and that's right here, right now. Nothing else besides maybe starting to feel hungry, and then their new now is going to be eating lunch. But they're currently always activated and present right in the now. So we use, you and me, having forgot that activity of play, we use this concept of here's where I am now, but here's where I want to be tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just being aware that you are in a now. And in that now is where you have to create the feeling of where you want to be in your new now. I know new alludes to past, but stick with me. I'm going to keep throwing in my ideas about the present moment and its power, all right? All changes take place in consciousness. The future, although prepared in every detail in advance, has several outcomes. At every moment of our lives, we have before us the choice of which of several futures we will choose. Now, going back and playing with the future, we're here now. Let's say that's where we are today, right now. Let's go ahead and go with what Neville's saying here. At every moment of our lives, we have the opportunity to choose which future we want. All these self-concepts exist simultaneously. All of them exist, all of them are done. All his creations are done. All probabilities exist at once. This probability you're in right now has open to it any future. Any opportunity is available to you. Any self-concept. You want to be a thousandaire, you want to be a millionaire, you want to be a billionaire, you want to be a trillion. It doesn't matter. You want to be single and alone and it's wonderful to have that kind of life, or do you want to be in love, married, and with a partner? Do you want to be healthy and feel good all the time and do all kinds of exercises and just feel fit, or do you want to be not healthy and getting the prescriptions and getting your friends feeling sorry for you? I'm not saying that sick people are just about that, but you have any self-concept available in your future at any moment of your life. There are two actual outlooks on the world possessed by everyone, a natural focus and a spiritual focus. The ancient teachers called the one the carnal mind, the other the mind of Christ. We may differentiate them as ordinary waking consciousness governed by our senses and a controlled imagination governed by desire. We may differentiate them as ordinary waking consciousness governed by our senses. That's right where we are here. Where we're in our subconscious, when we're tied into a consciousness. Controlled imagination governed by desire. Desire is coming from him. All that is comes into each of us. We recognize these two distinct centers of thought in the statement, the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, for they are spiritually discerned. The natural view confines reality to the moment called now. To the natural view, the past and future are purely imaginary. The spiritual view, on the other hand, sees the contents of time. It sees events as distinct and separated as objects in space. Spiritual view. The past and future are a present whole to the spiritual view. As I was discussing, it's all now, one moment. What is mental and subjective to the natural man is concrete and objective to the spiritual man. What's mental and subjective to the natural man is concrete and objective to the spiritual man. The spiritual man can see it objectively as his current now, even though he's here. To the natural man, it's mental and subjective, meaning he only sees here now. The spiritual man sees not only his subjective self, but sees his objective self, where he is, where he can be. The habit of seeing, also objective and subjective, is within yourself. So here you are objective, and your subjective is your subconscious. So you're making that impression onto your subconscious, your subjective self, to impact your self-concept. You have an objective and a subjective, like you have a masculine and feminine. And I believe that's what he's talking about. What's mental and subjective to the natural man, mental and subjective to the natural man, is concrete and objective to the spiritual man. Either way you want to take that one. The habit of seeing only that which our senses permit renders us totally blind to what otherwise we could see. To cultivate the faculty of seeing the invisible, we should often deliberately disentangle our minds from the evidence of the senses and focus our attention on an invisible state, mentally feeling it and sensing it until it has all the distinctness of reality. Mentally feeling it and sensing it until it has all distinctness of reality. See the invisible. How does it feel to be holding a lemon? How does it feel to be holding a lemon? How does it feel to be smelling that lemon you're holding? Now you are ignoring the senses because your eyes are closed. But when you're holding the lemon in your hand, you know what it feels like because you've held a lemon before. You know what it smells like because you smelled a lemon before. You've just taken, to cultivate the faculty of seeing the invisible, we should often deliberately disentangle our minds from the evidence of our senses Close off our eyeballs and focus our attention on an invisible state, mentally feeling it and sensing it until it has all the distinctness of reality. I could go surfing right now. I could close my eyes and I could feel myself dropping in on a wave right now. I can feel that. I literally can feel it because I've done it so many times. So I'm familiar with the feeling of it. Earnest, concentrated thought focused in a particular direction shuts out other sensations and causes them to disappear. We have but to concentrate on the state desired in order to see it. The habit of withdrawing attention from the region of sensation and concentrating it on the invisible develops our spiritual outlook and enables us to penetrate beyond the world of sense and to see that which is invisible. So I just used the lemon and I just used surfing. You can use anything you're familiar with. You must get this exercise going. You don't have to all of a sudden start with the house, the new house you're living in when you're renting right now. You can, whatever you're familiar with is what you should start this with. It's like prime the pump with what works. The lemon, tennis ball, golf ball. Start with what works. Close off to your senses. Imagine holding a golf ball. You know it's dimpled. You know what its weight feels like. You know the touch of it. So even though I don't have it in my hand, feel it's in your hand. Practice. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. Romans 1:20. Very good quote. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. This vision is completely independent of the natural faculties. Open it and quicken it. Without it, these instructions are useless, for things of the Spirit are spiritually discerned. A little practice will convince us that we can, by controlling our imagination, reshape our future in harmony with our desire. A little practice will convince us that we can, by controlling our imagination, reshape our future in harmony with our desire. Desire is the mainspring of action. Desire is the mainspring of action. We could not move a single finger unless we had a desire to move it. No matter what we do, we follow the desire which at the moment dominates our minds. When we break a habit, our desire to break it is greater than our desire to continue in the habit. The desires which impel us to action are those that hold our attention. A desire is but an awareness of something we lack or need to make our life more enjoyable. A desire is but an awareness of something we lack or need to make our life more enjoyable. Doesn't that sound wonderful? What about that chair? What about that pillow? What about that new car? What about that house? What about that partner? What about riding that wave? Desires always have some personal gain in view. The greater the anticipated gain, the more intense is the desire. It makes good sense. There is no absolutely unselfish desire. There it is. There is no absolutely unselfish desire. Where there is nothing to gain, there is no desire. And consequently, no action. We have a couple very profound sentences right there. There's no absolutely unselfish desire. Where there is nothing to gain, there is no desire, and consequently no action. You can see what motivates us. The problem and the solution are in the desire. When you're in this self-concept and you have a desire for somewhere else, it's the desire that came in and filled you with this urge. It seems to you a problem, but it also has the solution embedded within it. Therefore, impression into your subconscious, objectifying your new reality in that fulfilled desire. Where there is nothing to gain, there is no desire, and consequently no action. You won't make that impression upon your subconscious self. The spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. The spiritual man speaks to the natural man. Spiritual man speaks to the natural man. That's all us. Through the language of desire, the key to progress in life and to the fulfillment of dreams lies in ready obedience to its voice. Unhesitating obedience to its voice is an immediate assumption of the wish fulfilled. To desire a state is to have it. As Pascal has said, you would not have sought me had you not already found me. Very profound statement. Man, by assuming the feeling of his wish fulfilled, and then living and acting on this conviction, alters the future in harmony with his assumption. Assumptions awaken what they affirm. As soon as man assumes the feeling of his wish fulfilled, his four-dimensional self finds ways for the attainment of this end, discovers methods for its realization. I know of no clearer definition of the means by which we realize our desires than to experience in imagination what we would experience in the flesh were we to achieve our goal. Very potent sense, I will repeat it. I know of no clearer definition of the means by which we realize our desires than to experience in imagination what we would experience in the flesh were we to achieve our goal. This experience of the end wills the means. With its larger outlook, again, you never have to be concerned with the how. This experience of the end wills the means. If you're here and you're single and you want to be married, and you experience the end in your imagination and you feel it as you're falling asleep especially, it wills the means because it goes into their Father, he that hath it is given, and therefore the objectification. You never, ever, ever get concerned with the how. Ignore anything to do with the word how. The experience of the end wills the means. With its larger outlook, the four-dimensional self then constructs the means necessary to realize the accepted end. The undisciplined mind finds it difficult to assume a state which is denied by the senses. The undisciplined mind. Here's a technique that will make it easy to encounter events before they occur. To call things which are not seen as though they were. People have a habit of slighting the importance of simple things, but this simple formula for changing the future was discovered after years of searching and experimenting. The first step in changing the future is desire. That is, define your objective. Know definitely what you want. Secondly, hold on. Have we done that? Have we done this first step? This is only one sentence, and it can be a very, very difficult sentence because if you don't simply do this one first step, how are you going to get to your desire? Do you know simply what you want? Define your objective. There was a line in Bruce Almighty, Jim Carrey and Morgan Freeman, and right in the middle of the movie somewhere, Morgan Freeman and Jim Carrey are up in that empty floor of the building, and Morgan says to Jim Carrey's character, does anybody really know what they want? And Jim Carrey was in the thrux of this exact problem, and his character was in that movie. Very good movie, especially when this is right in the heart of the middle of the movie. And Morgan's character was God, by the way. I recommend the movie, especially because of that message. But it is very much the biggest first thing that has to be done. If you do not have a desire or an objective, what is it you're going to manifest? What is it you're going to consciously manifest? Or are you just riding along, floating along down the river on an inner tube, floating along down the river, letting it take you wherever you want to go, as Neville talked about in The Search. Oh. The first step in changing the future is desire. That is, define your objective. Know definitely what you want. Let's review. Close off the senses, go in the closet, close the door, and pray in secret. You go into, you close off the senses, means you close your eyes, you do your I am meditation. I am, I am, I am. And you ask yourself, what is it that I would enjoy? What do I really, really enjoy? Let anything float right to the top. You can also do this wonderfully. I've made a practice of this one. Right before you're going to sleep, ask a very important question and know with conviction that the first thing that floats to the top of your mind right when you wake up is going to be the answer to your question. Ask the question as you're falling asleep. What is it I really, really enjoy and want to do with my life? What is it I like? What is it that makes good sense to me? Go to sleep with that question on your mind and know to yourself that when you wake up, what's floating right to the top of your mind right when you wake up is your answer. It works really well. But understand also your awareness of being is where you first come out of. When you first come out of the dream state, when you first come out of the dream state, you're in the awareness of being, which is here. Then you load in your self-concept. So when you first start thinking, you already arrived in your self-concept. But when you first came out of that dream state, your sleeping state, you were plugged in here where all the answers are, where all wisdom is. I and my Father are one. My Father is greater than I. You ask the question as you fall to sleep, which is making an impression into your subconscious. That is plugged into all consciousness, which is Him. When you first wake up, that first answer that floats in with you into your self-concept is your answer. So I hope that adds a little bit. First step can be a doozy. Secondly, all right, now that we get the first step done. Secondly, construct an event which you believe you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. An event which implies fulfillment of your desire. Something that will have the action of self-predominant. Oh my gosh, go to the end. When you are going to get married and you take your honeymoon on Hawaii, because over here you were single and you said, I am that happily married I am, and you were imagining your married self, you went to the end by presupposing you were walking into your new home, having come back from the airport, coming back from your honeymoon, coming back from the 2 weeks, coming back from getting married, walking into your home, whether that's your home or new home or what have you, being carried over the threshold, you're happy to be back. That one picture presupposes every single thing else that went with it. You got the vacation, you went to Hawaii, you were proposed to, you got married, you had the wonderful time of your life. Maybe you went on a cruise, you went on a helicopter ride, you went zip lining, you went inner tubing, literally in Hawaii, they have that. You can do anything. You went snorkeling, you went surfing, you went body surfing, you did it all. But the moment when you walk back into your humble abode, you are nice and complete. You felt relieved. That relief is what we're talking about. You felt that feeling of relief when you walked back into your place. It presupposed every other thing that came before it. Repeating the second step, construct an event in which you believe you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire, an event which implies fulfillment of your desire, something that will have the action of self-predominant. Third, immobilize the physical body and induce a condition akin to sleep. Lay down, sit down in your comfortable chair, immobilize. Lie on a bed or relax in a chair and imagine that you are sleepy. Then, with eyelids closed and your attention focused on the action you intend to experience, in imagination, mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now. Imagining all the while you are actually performing the action here and now. What is the difference, I say to you, between your imagining it already done and being a fact that you went to Hawaii, got married, had your honeymoon, and you're flying back now? What is the difference between your imagining the experience versus the actual experience, and it's 2 months later? When you describe it to somebody else, a third person, and you're describing the memory that you just drummed up within yourself versus the actual experience, are they that much different? This is how you can get closer. Imagine, let's use that. Imagine going to your friend and telling him the same thing you're trying to imagine now. If you don't feel yourself drumming up the experience, then imagine you're telling a friend about the experience. This will help bolster what you can say to that friend. What would be the most wonderful way you could describe this experience you just had, getting proposed to, getting married in Hawaii, having your honeymoon, then coming home, and all the experiences in between? What's the difference in you having had the experience and the other one where you imagined it as real, when either one of those you can describe to your friend with the accuracy of either one? Does it make a difference? Does it make a difference if this one is an imagining and this one actually happened to your friend? No, it doesn't make a difference. And to test that, you can surprise a friend with any statement. You can use any statement. You can tell a friend who calls you on the phone, just tell them something wild that just happened. And I don't even want to give examples right here, but you know what to say. Tell them, oh, you're not going to guess what happened. Just such and such just happened. And this could be alluding to what you're imagining. And they'll go, oh, that's great, because they won't judge. They're there to help celebrate your newfound freedom, your newfound love, your newfound finance, your newfound anything, health. When you surprise a friend with a lie, you'll be amazed at their reaction when they don't know it's an actual untruth. I said the word lie, I should say an imagining. Just surprise somebody when they call you. Surprise them with something. Just say, oh, you're not going to guess what happened. And then just unveil, I just met somebody, we went on a date and we're totally in love now. And they're, oh, that's great news. And you'll see how simple the reactions of the world are when they follow what you've imagined is as strong as if you've actually experienced it. It's the same value. It's only in you that it's perceived to be different. So you use that. Okay. You must always participate in the imaginary action, not merely stand back and look on, but you must feel that you are actually performing the action so that the imaginary sensation is real to you. It is important always to remember that the proposed action must be one which follows the fulfillment of your desire, and also you must feel yourself into the action until it has all the vividness and distinctness of reality. For example, suppose you desired promotion in office. Being congratulated would be an event you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. Having selected this action as the one you will experience in imagination, immobilize the physical body, lay down, and induce a state akin to sleep, a drowsy state. I am sleepy, so very sleepy. Okay? But one in which you are still able to control the direction of your thoughts. A state in which you are attentive without effort. Now, imagine that a friend is standing before you. Put your imaginary hand into his. First, feel it to be solid and real, okay? Then carry on an imaginary conversation with him in harmony with the action. Do not visualize yourself at a distance in point of space and at a distance in point of time, being congratulated on your good fortune. Instead, make elsewhere here, and the future now. The future event is a reality now in a dimensionally larger world. And oddly enough, now in a dimensionally larger world is the equivalent to here in ordinary three-dimensional space of everyday life. The difference between feeling yourself in action here and now and visualizing yourself in action as though you were on a motion picture screen is the difference between success and failure. The difference will be appreciated if you will now visualize yourself climbing a ladder. Oh, I love this wonderful example. This happens to be what really woke me up to Neville. Let's give what he says, and I'll throw in my experience. The difference will be appreciated if you will now visualize yourself climbing a ladder. We can all do that, okay? Just grab the rungs, put your feet on a rung, put one hand, put the other foot, and climb the ladder. Imagine yourself, visualize yourself climbing the ladder. That means these are closed, you're visualizing. Then with eyelids closed, and imagine that a ladder is right in front of you and feel you are actually climbing it, okay? Desire, physical immobility bordering on sleep, and imaginary action in which self-feelingly predominates here and now are not only important factors in altering the future, but they are essential conditions in consciously projecting the spiritual self. If when the physical body is immobilized, we become possessed of the idea to do something and imagine that we are doing it here and now, and keep the imaginary action feelingly going right up until sleep ensues, we are likely to awaken out of the physical body to find ourselves in a dimensionally larger world with a dimensionally larger focus and actually doing what we desired and imagined we were doing in the flesh. But whether we awaken or not, we are actually performing the action in the fourth dimensional world, and we will reenact it in the future, here in the third dimensional world. My experience with the ladder was after I discovered a video of a student of Neville's talking about how Neville told, when he was taking classes with Neville, he was told to come back if he goes home and climbs the ladder over the next week or a couple 3 days, to say, I will not climb a ladder all day, and post it on pieces of paper, and then at night imagine yourself climbing the ladder. And you can look us up on YouTube, the videos are everywhere. If I find it, I'll put it in the description. But the idea is to go to sleep doing the action, but all day long staking the claim that I will not climb a ladder, I will not climb a ladder, I will not climb a ladder. But when you fall to sleep, you imagine yourself climbing a ladder. Well, when I discovered that video, it was the morning time, it was about 5 a.m., and I just did it in my mind. I says, okay, I will not climb a ladder, but I know how to climb a ladder, so I can see myself climbing a ladder. And I took like 7 Post-its, 5 a.m., went to work. At work, I hadn't been on a ladder in a long time, and I had to go show somebody some work that needed to be done, and to show him above this certain space, I had to literally get on this vertical ladder. So, it's a ladder that's attached to a wall, basically. It was on this machinery. I had to go up that ladder. It was 9 a.m. It was only 4 hours later, and it had been a long while since I was on a ladder. So I was on that ladder, and I was pointing out this stuff that I needed him to do, and I was pointing around, and I'm like going, oh my gosh, I'm actually on a ladder? I thought this was going to take several days. It was like 4 hours. 9 o'clock, something like that. I was already on this ladder, and I had written it down. I put the Post-it in my wallet. I put the Post-it in my car. I put one on my mirror. I did all of that was in the video, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this out. And boom, I was already on the ladder within a couple hours. So it just knocked me off my socks, and that's when I really dove off the diving board into Neville, because I knew how profound and real this was, because it had worked so fast for me, and and my previous 33 years, or at that point 31 years, no, 30 years, 30 years of this study. I've studied Seth material for 30 years and a lot of other metaphysical subjects. So I had already been heavily steeped in the idea that you create your own reality, especially with my study of the Seth material for at least 2.5 decades with my teacher. And then she left the party. And then I had 5 more years before I got into Ho'oponopono. I did that for 2 years straight, continuously, just that. Then it brought me at the steps of the Neville Goddard. So that's 30 years, then 2 years, then now, or approximate. Then I got into Neville 3 years ago. This was about January 1st of 22 when I discovered that ladder situation. Yeah. Then I dove off, like you all. It's worth it. It's worth the ride. All right. Experience has taught me to restrict the imaginary action to condense the idea which is to be the object of our meditation into a single act, and to reenact it over and over again until it has the feeling of reality. You get up to the top of the ladder, you climb back down to the bottom, get off the ladder, then see the ladder again, and go back up the ladder and come back down the ladder. If you're falling asleep and you think of something else, come back over to the ladder. Otherwise, the attention will wander off along an associational track, and hosts of associated images will be presented to our attention. We will lose focus. In a few seconds, they will lead us hundreds of miles away from our objective in point of space and years away in point of time. If we decide to climb a particular flight of stairs because that is the likely event to follow the realization of our desire, then we must restrict the action to climbing that particular flight of stairs. Should our attention wander off, we must bring it back to its task of climbing that flight of stairs and keep on doing so until the imaginary action has all the solidity and distinctness of reality. The idea must be maintained in the field of presentation without any sensible effort on our part. The idea must be maintained in the field of presentation without any sensible effort on our part. We must, with the minimum of effort, permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Wander, your mind goes over here, you're thinking of grade school, come back to the ladder. You're climbing the ladder, then all of a sudden you're flying somewhere, come back to the ladder. Now you're climbing the ladder and you get to the top and you're starting to climb back down, and all of a sudden you're in your car driving the freeway earlier today. No, come back to the ladder. Stop that. Come back to the ladder. Climbing the ladder. All of a sudden, before you know it, you're falling asleep. You're asleep. But you are the one that must apply the discipline to come back to the ladder, because it's easy to drift away from the ladder. Let's use this ladder as a very, very fun example to start and try for yourself. So you wander off and you're floating, flying, doing anything but climbing the ladder. Bring yourself back. Consciously remind yourself about the ladder. Try. And each night it gets better and stronger. Drowsiness facilitates change because it favors attention without effort. But it must not be pushed to the stage of sleep, in which we shall no longer be able to control the movements of our attention, but rather a moderate degree of drowsiness in which we are still able to direct our thoughts. A most effective way to embody a desire is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then, in a relaxed and sleepy state, repeat over and over again like a lullaby any short phrase which implies fulfillment of our desire, such as "thank you," as though we address the higher power for having done it for us. If, however, we sink a conscious projection into a dimensionally larger world, then we must keep the action going right up until sleep ensues. Experience in imagination with all the distinctness of reality what would be experienced in the flesh were you to achieve your goal, and you shall in time meet in the flesh as you met in your imagination. Again, as I said before, you literally are already doing this consistently. You're already really, actually very, very good at this. It's a skill set you have been using since you're a little kid, period. You're doing it right now. What we're doing here together and going over this material, in this book particularly, is bringing to your awareness how to apply it consciously to that which you desire. You might know you've done this all the time. You might know when you were a kid you would think of things and they would come true. You might know as a teenager, you might know as a young adult, and maybe at some point you forgot. Maybe at some point you'd rather not be focused on that kind of fulfillment. You'd rather let the cards fall where they may, let the dice fall where they may, or what have you, and you'd like the surprise. But maybe you want to come back to that conscious awareness. So this is how you do it. You're in a self-concept, you have a desire, maybe you've ignored that desire, and maybe you've been stuck in this loop over and over with the desire on static pause all this time, whatever amount of time we're talking about. But now you realize, wait a minute, I want to go ahead and take conscious control of meeting my desire, because my desire sounds like a fun, fulfilling thing to do. Okay, well, I just need to make a subconscious impression. That is going to help fulfill the objectification of my desire. What we're doing here is becoming consciously aware of how to do that. Feed the mind with premises, that is, assertions presumed to be true, because assumptions, though unreal to the senses, if persisted in until they have the feeling of reality, will harden into facts. Very impotent sentence. No, I didn't mean that. Important. Feed the mind with premises, that is, assertions presumed to be true. Feed the mind with premises that feed the mind with premises, that is, assertions presumed to be true because assumptions, though unreal to the senses, if persisted in until they have the feeling of reality, will harden into facts. To an assumption, all means which promote its realization are good. To an assumption, all means which promote its realization are good. It influences the behavior of all by inspiring in all the movements, the actions, and the words which tend towards its fulfillment. Oh my goodness. He's talking about an assumption and the life of an assumption right there. To understand how man molds his future in harmony with his assumption, we must know what we mean by a dimensionally larger world, for it is to a dimensionally larger world that we go to alter our future. The observation of an event before it occurs implies that the event is predetermined from the point of view of man in the three-dimensional world. Therefore, to change the conditions here in the three dimensions of space, we must first change them in the four dimensions of space. Man does not know exactly what is meant by a dimensionally larger world, and would no doubt deny the existence of a dimensionally larger self. He is quite familiar with the three dimensions of length, width, and height, and he feels that if there were a fourth dimension, it should be just as obvious to him as the dimensions of length, width, and height. A dimension is not a line. It is any way in which a thing can be measured that is entirely different from all other ways. That is, to measure a solid fourth dimensionally, we simply measure it in any direction except that of its length, width, and height. That is, to measure a solid fourth dimensionally, we simply measure it in any direction except its length, width, and height. Is there another way of measuring an object other than those of its length, width, and height? Time measures my life without employing the three dimensions of length, width, and height. There's no such thing as an instantaneous object. Its appearance and disappearance are measurable. It endures for a definite length of time. We can measure its lifespan without using the dimensions of length, width, and height. Time is definitely a fourth way of measuring an object. The more dimensions an object has, the more substantial and real it becomes. A straight line which lies entirely in one dimension acquires shape, mass, and substance by the addition of dimensions. What new quality would time, the fourth dimension, give, which would make it just as vastly superior to solids as solids are to surfaces, and surfaces as to lines are to lines? Time is a medium for changes in experience because all changes take time. Time is a medium for changes in experience because all changes take time. The new quality is changeability. Observe that if we bisect a solid, its cross-section will be a surface. By bisecting a surface, we obtain a line, and by bisecting a line, we get a point. This means that a point is but a cross-section of a line, which is in turn but a cross-section of a surface, which is in turn but a cross-section of a solid, which is in turn, if carried to its logical conclusion, but a cross-section of a fourth dimensional object. We cannot avoid the inference that all three-dimensional objects are but cross-sections of four-dimensional bodies, which means when I meet you, I meet a cross-section of the four-dimensional you. The four-dimensional you that is not seen. To see the fourth-dimensional self, I must see every cross-section or moment of your life from birth to death and see them all coexisting. Very interesting point, and Seth brought this up. Somebody brought up astrology or birth chart in an ESP class with Seth, and Seth said I would have to see to do a proper astrological chart, I would have to see your birth date and your death date. Which you're like, whoa. But Seth as we are becoming, when we understand this material, Seth, when he talked to the students who would ask a question, he would literally address their entire self, meaning he would address with the knowledge of all their probable futures and pasts at once, as all complete. He would address the probable one asking the question and would give the answer that fit best that probable version of that student at that moment, in that space, in that time. The same applies to us. This is my self-concept today, and infinitely available are all self-concepts because they are all done. All his creations are done. So if I have one self-concept I am occupying right now, infinitely available are all the others. Okay? If I am imagining lovingly for another, and my self-concept's here, and I'm imagining for my friend that he is winning the trifecta at the racetrack, then I subjectively impress myself upon my subconscious that he's communicating to me that he won the trifecta and is coming to a large sum of money. That subconscious impression is happening here within him. But it's the awareness of all of the idea that all of these are available. I don't just say that to myself that only this one's available to my friend. I am literally conscious aware because of these years of study, 33 years. I am consciously aware that not only does my friend exist as the winner of that trifecta, but he exists as in every other form. I know when I talk to him, because I talked to him this morning, in fact, I know I'm talking to the one I'm talking to, but I know there are tons available. The infinite amount of the variations of him are available. So when I imagine loving that he wins at the horse track, I know I'm communicating with that one there. Even though he didn't tell me on the phone today, I know that phone call's coming. I know that phone call's coming. That conversation will happen. I already know because I've already imagined it lovingly from myself. But again, the point is here where we're at is that all of the versions of him are available. When I imagine lovingly for him in one state, I can do and use any state. To see the fourth dimensional self, I must see every cross-section or moment of your life from birth to death and see them all coexisting. My focus should take in the entire array of sensory impressions which you have experienced on earth, plus those you might encounter. I should see them not in the order in which they were experienced by you, but as the present whole, what we just described. Because change is the characteristic of the fourth dimension, I should see them in a state of flux as a living, animated whole. If we have all of this clearly fixed in our minds, what does it mean to us in this three-dimensional world? It means that if we can move along time's length, we can see the future and alter it as we so desire. This world which we think so solidly real is a shadow out of which and beyond which we may at any time pass. This world which we think so solidly real is a shadow out of which and beyond which we may at any time pass. It is an abstraction from a more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, a more fundamental world abstracted from a still more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, and so on to infinity. The absolute is unattainable by any means or analysis, no matter how many dimensions we add to the world. Whoo, doggy. What a wonderful sentence. This one here. This world which we think so solidly real is a shadow out of which and beyond which we may at any time pass. We already know the fourth dimension is the reality, and we're creating the third dimensional. The third dimensional is the shadow. In a previous video, we were studying the fact that your self-concept here is impressing your subconscious to become a new self-concept. Well, this impression here is happening in the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is where reality is. Reality casts a shadow of a new dimension, of a new dimensional self in space. Space, your 3D self, is the shadow of this fourth dimensional self. fourth dimensional self is casting this shadow. This shadow is casting that shadow. That's the two-dimensional self. If I were to outline the shadow on the wall, that's a two-dimensional image like that is, because it's just a line. That's the two-dimensional shadow of my 3D self, and the 3D self is a shadow of my fourth dimensional self. My fourth dimensional self is when I feel it real, when I feel an experience, when I feel and hear my friend calling me to tell me of his celebration of winning the racetrack, the bet he had at the racetrack. My fourth dimensional reality, when I hear that, hear his voice, sharing his celebration, I say congratulations back, that's fourth dimensional reality. When I imagine it. When he calls me and tells me and shares the good news, now it's in 3D reality. That's the shadow experience. That's an already thing has happened. Now I'm experiencing it in time. Time came after the fourth dimensional creation. Time is second. Then the shadow here, let's say he's counting his money. The shadow is then after the three-dimensional awakening, if you will. Man can prove the existence of a dimensionally larger world simply by focusing his attention on an invisible state and imagining that he sees and feels it. If he remains concentrated in this state, his present environment will pass away, and he will awaken in a dimensionally larger world where the object of his contemplation will be seen as a concrete objective reality. Intuitively, I feel that were he to abstract his thoughts from this dimensionally larger world and retreat still further within his mind, he would again bring about an externalization of time. He would discover that every time he retreats into his inner mind and brings about an externalization of time, space becomes dimensionally larger. And he would therefore conclude that both time and space are serial, and that the drama of life is but the climbing of multitudinous dimensional time block. And he would therefore conclude that both time and space are serial, and that the drama of life is but the climbing of a multitudinous dimensional time block. Multitudinous is a word that Seth often used as well as multidimensional reality. Oh, very, very powerful paragraph. There's a lot of layers in the lasagna in this one paragraph, and we can go on and on and on, but we'll keep moving. I guess I hope we're getting the gist of how we just are. The ultimate bottom line is just to feel the imagination as the reality. Then your waking self is the shadow. That's very important. Just slip that in there. Scientists will one day explain why there is a serial universe, but in practice, how we use this serial universe to change the future is more important. To change the future, we need only concern ourselves with two worlds in the infinite series. The world we know by reason of our bodily organs, and the world we perceive independently of our bodily organs. Wow. End of chapter. That last sentence was very, very powerful. I mean, you know the world as your bodily organs in sense. You can sense the temperature. But when you close your eyes and you imagine your bodily organs, you can imagine them healthy. You can imagine them functioning perfectly. You can imagine all of your arteries open and clear. You can imagine your lungs taking in oxygen, expelling carbon monoxide, getting rid of toxins. You can imagine all this working in harmony. That's your fourth dimensional reality. You can simply imagine that. You can imagine yourself walking down the aisle. You can imagine being there with your most beautiful bride or groom. You can imagine saying, I do. You can imagine the hug and the kiss. You can imagine walking into your house after your honeymoon 2 weeks in Hawaii. That is fourth dimensional reality. The more you repeat that, the more it's going to make that concrete into physical 3D shadow. You can imagine going to your bank account and transferring and paying off your entire credit cards in one fell swoop. Just put the numbers on there. You can imagine that you're walking to your computer, you're paying off all debts, every single one of them. It doesn't matter if you got a mortgage, it doesn't matter if you want to pay your rent a year in advance. All transfers are done, all your taxes, every single thing done. You can imagine that as a reality. You pressed enter, it's done. Now you're congratulating your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. It's done. That is in fourth dimensional reality. That is as real as you experiencing it in 3D reality. This is 3D reality. Then that is as real as that. That is as real as that because it's casting that. The imagination we just did is casting this. 4D, 3D, 2D. 4D is where it exists primarily first. In time, if we want to go back to this linear use of time, that's first. That's also the present moment. This is second. This is next. The 3D. 4D's first, 3D's next. That is the shadow. That's the shadow. Whatever's moving in 4D, this is 4D. I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am married. The shadow is 3D. That the more this, I'm using my hand here, but the more this is convinced of its imagining in 4D, the more this 3D shadow will take shape. Here's 4D moving. Here's 3D getting the vibe. Wait, oh, you're feeling it real, are you? Okay, wow, look at this. The shadow self, your 3D self, is in line with what you imagined. Bridge of incidents occurs. You go out with friends. All of a sudden, there's the opposite sex that you wanted to meet. That's funny. What a coincidence. It just feels good talking to this person. You go on dates. You go to dinner. All of a sudden, you're engaged and you're married and you're buying a new house or having kids. All of this thing is happening in fourth dimensional space first. Then your 3D self follows. We're not concerned about the shadow because we've seen it. We take it for granted that it's cast on the ground all the time, so we take that for granted. But what we haven't taken for granted is where this shadow has been coming from this whole time. And that's what we're learning here together. We're learning how our four-dimensional self is creating our three-dimensional shadow. And we do that through feeling it real. Feeling it real means going to sleep with the idea in mind, making a subjective impression onto your subjective consciousness. This, to him that hath it is given. This goes into all consciousness. Him, God, I am. That makes it real. It is given, your new objective reality. It doesn't matter what that reality is. Know where the reality exists. It exists in the fourth dimensions first. It's in your imagination first. 3 dimensions follow. Okay? What a wonderful chapter. Out of This World, Chapter 1. Also the title of the book, Out of This World, Chapter 1. Wow, what a wonderful. Let me know what you liked in that chapter. If you got anything out of that, if anything was new, if you're trying any of these ideas, are you applying them? Let me know, give me some feedback. Let's talk about it. Fun stuff. All right, we'll see you in the next chapter. Neville Goddard, Out of This World, Chapter 2, Assumptions Become Facts. Men believe in the reality of the external world because they do not know how to focus and condense their powers to penetrate its thin crust. This book has only one purpose: the removing of the veil of the senses and traveling into another world. To remove the veil of the senses, we do not employ great effort. The objective world vanishes by turning our attention away from it. We have only to concentrate on the state desired in order to mentally see it. But to give it reality so that it will become an objective fact, we must focus attention upon the invisible state until it has the feeling of reality. When through concentrated attention, our desire appears to possess the distinctness and feeling of reality, we have given it the right to become a visible, concrete fact. If it is difficult to control the direction of your attention while in a state akin to sleep, you may find gazing fixedly into an object very helpful. Do not look at its surface, but into and beyond any plane object such as a wall, a carpet, or any other object which possesses depth. Arrange it to return as little reflection as possible. Imagine then that in this depth you are seeing and hearing what you want to see and hear until your attention is exclusively occupied by the imagined state. At the end of your meditation, when you awake from your controlled waking dream, you feel as though you had returned from a great distance. The visible world which you had shut out returns to consciousness, and by its very presence informs you that you've been self-deceived into believing that the object of your contemplation was real. Let's repeat that sentence. The visible world which you had shut out by closing these returns to consciousness, and by its very presence informs you that which you have been self-deceived into believing that the object of your contemplation was real. But if you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, you will remain faithful to your vision, and by this sustained mental attitude, confirm your gift of reality and prove that you have the power to give reality to your desires, that they may become visible, concrete facts. Define your ideal and concentrate your attention upon the idea of identifying yourself with your ideal. Define your ideal. Assume the feeling of being it, the feeling that would be yours were you already the embodiment of your ideal. Then live and act upon this conviction. Live and act upon this conviction. This assumption, though denied by the senses, if persisted in, will become fact. Though denied by the senses. You will know when you have succeeded in fixing the desired state in consciousness by simply looking mentally at the people you know. In dialogues with yourself, you are less inhibited and more sincere than in actual conversations with others. Therefore, the opportunity for self-analysis arises when you are surprised by your mental conversations with others. Those are those here. If you see them as you formerly saw them, you have not changed your concept of self. For all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to your world. If you see them as you formerly saw them, you have not changed your concept of self. For all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to your world. Those conversations are here. Remembering previously on the last tape or the one before, on the last video or the one before, I was talking about taking the conversation, excuse me, I hope I don't lose my point. When I said, tell your friend that new good news. Oh yeah, I'm dating somebody now, and we're getting along great, and they've known you for a while for not being in a relationship, and now you have a new relationship, and they call you out of the blue, and it has been a month or two since you've heard from them and you've talked to them, and they call you, and you just spring right onto them, even though in your 3D reality this is not so, but you are concentrating on it while you fall asleep. You say this to them for the fun of it. Oh yeah, it's been great. I've been dating somebody new, and it's been just a great time. We're going out all the time. We're having a lot of fun. And this just seems very serious, and I'm just loving it. And they're going to just watch their surprise. Watch their surprise. Now, I said to practice that in doing that with somebody that you talk to that is a friend of yours. But at the same time, what he just said right here is when you imagine that friend and you imagine those conversations, have they changed here? Now, the one I mentioned just now to use is instilling that change. But what he's saying here is that if you see the same old conversation with somebody and it's not changed here with them, then it hasn't changed here. Repeating, in dialogues with yourself, you are less inhibited and more sincere than in actual conversations with others. Therefore, the opportunity for self-analysis arises when you are surprised by your mental conversations with others. If you see them as you formerly saw them, then you have not changed your concept of self. For all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to your world. In your meditation, allow others to see you as they would see you were this new concept of self a concrete fact. You always seem to others as embodiment of the ideal you inspire. Embodiment. Embodiment. That is your physical 3D self, embodiment. You always seem to others an embodiment of the ideal you inspire. Therefore, in meditation, when you contemplate others, You must be seen by them mentally as you would be seen by them physically, were your concept of self an objective fact. That is, in meditation, you imagine that they see you expressing that which you desire to be. That's when you're imagining them congratulating you on the new relationship. Oh, I'm so glad to hear. And you're hugging them and they're giving you a hug and they're saying, I'm so glad to hear this new relationship and it's working out great. And you're in your imagination, in your falling asleep state, being congratulated by them, you're creating the new reality right there. Therefore, in meditation, when you contemplate others, you must be seen by them mentally as you would be seen by them physically, were your concept of self an objective fact. That is, in meditation, you imagine that they see you expressing that which you desire to be. What does the imagination cost you? Your imagination is right there, ready to be used anytime, 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 night or day, morning or evening. If you assume that you are what you want to be, your desire is fulfilled. And in fulfillment, all longing is neutralized. Remember, once you have the attainment of your desire, there's no logical, or actually, there's no reason to imagine it anymore because you've already attained it. That's also called going into the Sabbath, when you know it's done. You cannot continue desiring what you have already realized. Your desire is not something you labor to fulfill. It is recognizing something you already possess. Your desire is not something you labor to fulfill. It is recognizing something you already possess. Remembering again that 4D is your imagination, and that is reality. You already possess it if you imagined it. It's already in your possession in your imagination. It's already in your possession in the shadow world right here, 3D reality. Now that's the step you're taking, okay? It is assuming the feeling of being that which you desire to be. Believing and being are one. The conceiver and his conception are one. Believing and being are one. The conceiver and his conception are one. Therefore, that which you conceive yourself to be can never be so far off as even to be near, for nearness implies separation. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. Being is the substance of things hoped for the evidence of things not yet seen. If you assume that you are what you want to be, then you will see others as they are related to your assumption. If you assume that you are what you want to be, then you will see others as they are related to your assumption. If, however, it is the good of others that you desire, then, in meditation, you must represent them to yourself as already being that which you desire them to be. It is through desire that you rise above your present sphere, and the road from longing to fulfillment is shortened as you experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh, where you are already the embodiment of the ideal you desire to be. I have stated that man has at every moment of time that choice before him, which of several futures he will encounter. But the question arises, how is this possible when the experiences of man, awake in the three-dimensional world, are predetermined? As his observation of an event before it occurs implies. This ability to change the future will be seen if we liken the experiences of life on earth to this printed page. Man experiences events on earth singly and successively in the same way that you are now experiencing the words of this page. Imagine that every word on this page represents a single sensory impression. To get the context, to understand my meaning, you focus your vision on the first word in the upper left-hand corner, and then move your focus across the page from left to right, letting it fall on the word singly and successively. By the time your eyes reach the last word on this page, you have extracted my meaning. Suppose, however, on looking at the page with all the printed words thereon equally present, you decided to rearrange them. You could, by rearranging them, tell an entirely different story. In fact, you could tell many different stories. A dream is nothing more than uncontrolled four-dimensional thinking, or the arrangement of both past and future sensory impressions. Back to the previous paragraph, you could literally do that. When this was written by Neville in 49, I said? You could literally not do that. It would take quite a bit of effort to make another story out of all those words. But today you can go to ChatGPT and take Out of This World 1949. You could take any page of this and do exactly what he said. And you could tell ChatGPT to use the words of this quote. You could copy one page and get an entirely different story and meaning out of it. I'm sure ChatGPT could pull that off. It does everything else. A dream is nothing more than uncontrolled four-dimensional thinking. Uncontrolled four-dimensional thinking, or the rearrangement of both past and future sensory impressions. Man seldom dreams of events in the order which he experiences them when awake. He usually dreams of two or more events which are separated in time, fused into a single sensory impression, or, in his dream, he so completely rearranges his single waking sensory impressions that he does not recognize them when he encounters them in his waking state. For example, I dreamed that I delivered a package to the restaurant in my apartment building. The hostess said to me, "You can't leave that there." Whereupon the elevator operator gave me a few letters, and as I thanked him for them, he in turn thanked me. At this point, the night elevator operator appeared and waved a greeting to me. The following day, as I left my apartment, I picked up a few letters which had been placed at my door. On my way down, I gave the day elevator operator a tip and thanked him for taking care of my mail, whereupon he thanked me for the tip. On my return home that day, I overheard a doorman say to a delivery man, "You can't leave that there." He heard, but it was somebody else experiencing it. On my return home that day, I overheard a doorman say to a delivery man, "You can't leave that there." In the dream, he heard the hostess say to him, "You can't leave that there." Back to his waking self. As I was about to take the elevator up to my apartment, I was attracted by a familiar face in the restaurant, and as I looked in, the hostess greeted me with a smile. Late that night, I escorted my dinner guests to the elevator, and as I said goodbye to them, the night operator waved goodnight to me. By simply rearranging a few of the single sensory impressions I was destined to encounter, and by fusing two or more of them into a single sensory impressions, I constructed a dream which differed quite a bit from my waking experience. When we have learned to control the movements of our attention in the four-dimensional world, we shall be able to consciously create circumstances in the three-dimensional world. Back to what I said in the previous video, I believe it was, when I talked about learning about how to use the dream state, or even in the video before that, there's nothing more important than investigating your dreams or becoming awake in your dreams or writing down your dreams or understanding that that is four-dimensional reality. And what he just said is a profound statement as to the practice of remembering your dreams, writing them down in the morning. The way you're going to get good at becoming awake in your dreams is by remembering them. When you're remembering them, of course, you write them down. This is how you bring the four-dimensional reality of yourself, your four-dimensional self, into 3D reality. You bring it by remembering it and writing it here. Since you brought 4D reality into 3D reality, that means inversely, the law of inverse or reverse, I forgot the name of the chapter. It's an inverse reaction. The law of reverse probability, I think I forget the name, excuse me. But what's going to happen as you bring that 4D reality into your waking self, automatically your waking self is going to be able to go into your 4D reality. One does the other. So if you are wanting to be awake in your dreams, like to be a lucid dreamer, it isn't as important to try and just wake up in your dreams and ask yourself, am I dreaming? Which is a very, very important thing to do. The other part of it is to bring that reality here, which inversely puts you there. To me, the symbol of yin and yang represents that concept, where those two water droplet looking things are swimming into each other. One's white with a black dot, one's black with a white dot. That's like the night it's coming into the day and the day is going into the night. It's the same thing you can do to become awake in your dreams. You bring that reality here. Fourth dimensional reality comes into 3D reality by writing down your dreams. And then therefore your waking self is now invited to become present into your 4-dimensional world, which is your dreaming state. I cannot stress how important that is. Get a notepad, get a pen, paper, pencil, put it on your nightstand. Have it sitting there, just sitting there. Remind yourself as you fall asleep, I will remember my dreams. And write them down in the morning. You wake up, write down anything. If you saw an orange, write the orange down. If you saw an orange being sliced in half, write down orange is getting sliced in half. It doesn't matter. I saw an orange, a flower, and an elephant. Orange, flower, elephant. You have to write these things down if you hope to bring fourth dimensional reality to your waking consciousness, therefore taking your waking consciousness into fourth dimensional reality. When we have learned to control the movements of our attention in the fourth dimensional world, in the 4-dimensional world, we shall be able to consciously create circumstances in the 3-dimensional world. Consciously, he said. We learn this control through the waking dream, where our attention can be maintained without effort. For attention minus effort is indispensable to changing the future. We can, in a controlled waking dream, consciously construct an event which we desire to experience in the 3-dimensional world. Listen to the sentence. We can, in a controlled waking dream, consciously construct an event which we desire to experience in the 3-dimensional world. The sensory impressions we use to construct our waking dream are present realities displaced in time or the 4-dimensional world. All that we do is in constructing the waking dream is to select from the vast array of sensory impressions those which, when they are properly arranged, imply that we have realized our desire. With the dream clearly defined, we relax in a chair and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep, a state which, although bordering on sleep, leaves us in conscious control of the movements of our attention. Right on the edge. When we have achieved that state, we experience in imagination what we would experience in reality were this waking dream an objective fact. When we get to that state of akin to sleep, we don't go to sleep. We experience in imagination what we would experience in reality were this waking dream an objective fact. In applying this technique to change the future, it is important always to remember that the only thing which occupies the mind during the waking dream is the waking dream, the predetermined action which implies the fulfillment of our desire. How the waking dream becomes physical fact is not our concern. Anytime you see the word how or hear from Neville anywhere, pay close attention. You're never to be concerned with how. His ways are past finding out. How the waking dream becomes physical fact is not our concern. If you have a habit of thinking how this and how that, stop it. I'm giving you permission right now. Just stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. It's very difficult. Habits are a trip. Habits are like a law. I've read a yellow book called The Power of Habit. Oh boy. You want to drill down into it? That's a good book to read. But they and I think I heard Neville say it, it's like they're like a law to you. When a habit's a habit, it's like a law. It's like you have to do this thing, whatever it is. If your habit is constantly asking how, at least you know you have the worst habit to overcome. Now I'm telling you that a habit in general is one thing, but the habit of how is a doozy. So good luck with that. Let go of it. I myself too have this embedded. We all have, I would think, embedded to some degree or another, but hopefully let's bring it to the least degree. Our acceptance of the waking dream as physical reality wills the means for its fulfillment. Our acceptance of the waking dream as physical reality wills the means for its fulfillment. Let me again lay the foundation of changing the future, which is nothing more than a controlled waking dream. 1, define your objective. Know definitely what you want. What do you want? What do you want? Have you written that down? Write it in the comments. What do you want? Put a number one. Here's what I want. I want to be president. Whatever. What do you want? Number one. Know definitely what you want, all right? That's your objective. Two, construct an event which you believe you will encounter following the fulfillment of what you want, your desire. Something which will have the action of self predominant. An event which implies the fulfillment of your desire. Self-predominant means an event which implies the fulfillment of your desire. If you're walking into your house from your honeymoon, that means you had the honeymoon. That means you had the wedding. That means you had the vacation and the time off. That means you had the proposal. That means you had the date. That means you got along. That means you kissed. Everything is included. All of the above is included when you construct the event which you believe you will encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. If you're at the end, everything else already goes with it. You only have to be concerned about the end and none of the how of anything before. You don't need to be concerned with anything before. Nothing. You don't have to be concerned about your weight, your height, your width, your whatever. Nothing matters when you go to the end, after the fulfillment of your desire. 3, immobilize the physical body and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. Then mentally fill yourself right into the proposed action. Okay, I'm walking in with my new spouse into our new home. I'm walking across the foyer. I'm being carried across the foyer. What does it feel like to be carried? Okay, lay back in his arms. Immobilize the physical body and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. Then mentally fill yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now. In your here and now. You imagine yourself being carried across the threshold of your new house after coming back from the honeymoon. That imagining is here. It is now. Otherwise, you couldn't imagine it. You couldn't even imagine it unless it was here and it was now. That's how this works. How can you imagine this? I'm going to set this up for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. No. It doesn't work like that. I'm going to imagine this happened before. No, that doesn't. We're not going to go past and future. That's not where your power is applied. Shout out to Seth. Your power is in the present, period. I know Neville says it too, but your power is only now. So when you go and mentally feel yourself into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you were actually performing the action here and now, so that you experience and imagine what you would experience in the flesh, where you now to realize your goal. That is step 3 and the final action here. It is your now this is happening. When you're imagining being carried over the threshold of your new house with your new spouse, that imagining is only happening in one place. Here, obviously, and now only. That's it. And the greater thing is, when you're absent from your now, meaning you close these off to these senses, you're not concerned about the shadow world because that's the past. You're concerned with the now world. The now is your imagination. Everything out here is a shadow. Physical reality is 3D reality, is a shadow of your 4th dimensional self. Your 4th dimensional self is imagination reality. It's where you're one with the Lord. It's in the house of your Father. It's right here. This is 4th dimensional reality. These are closed. You're in 4th dimensional reality. This is what casts a shadow upon 3-dimensional reality. 3-dimensional reality is the past. So the only now that actually exists is 4th dimensional reality. When you close those peepers, you're in 4th dimensional reality. It behooves you to take your nap. I take naps every single day. Go to Seth Speaks and read chapter 8. He only talks about it in one chapter. I know I'm mixing formulas here, but it really is profound. He talks about how much sleep you don't need, but also the potential importance of a nap if you do reduce your sleep to the amount he talks about in that chapter. Seth Speaks, chapter 8. Doesn't talk about it in any more than 48 books, but in that one book only. And the idea of taking a nap every day, if you're going to shorten your sleep, it's very profound because you get to go to your sats falling asleep twice a day. You get to wake up in sats twice a day. If you're not going to stop and do meditation, that is. So naps are very, very, very positive, very good, very opportunistic. Define your objective, number 1. Know definitely what you want. Number 2, construct an event that you believe you will encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. An event which implies the fulfillment of your desire. Number 3, immobilize your physical body. Induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. Then mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action, here and now, so that you experience it in imagination, what you would experience in the flesh, where you're now to realize your goal. Speaking of 4th-dimensional and 3-dimensional, you can understand what he's talking about with the future and the past. I am boosting it with the idea of 4th-dimensional and 3-dimensional. I know he's going to cover it. I learned it from him. But the idea is, I don't know where, if it's right here in this chapter or in this book, but your 4th-dimensional self is now. It's the moment of nowness. It's the only moment that matters, here and now. So whatever you're doing in that imagination of yours, whatever that is casting the past event, which is the event you wake up to. That's the past, as I've said before. Your waking reality is your past. So 4th-dimensional reality is where you can change that, which means you're really affecting your future. When you're in 4th-dimensional reality, you're affecting the future. Future is 4th-dimensional reality. Experience is 3-dimensional reality, which is your past. It's the past of that 4th-dimensional self. Experience has convinced me that this is the perfect way to achieve my goal. However, my own many failures would convict me were I to imply that I have completely mastered the movements of my attention. I can, however, with the ancient teacher say, this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize. End of chapter. Oh, man. Assumptions become facts out of this world. Chapter 2. What a great chapter. I mean, my favorite part is that last part we covered. I really do feel that when you understand 4th-dimensional reality like that, that it opens up a whole new envelope of potential for you. Let me make sure we make this complete. All that is, I am God right here. Self-concept, the one you're in now, the one you want to be in. Many other opportunities are there for you. Anything you want to be, all potentials exist. They're all already done. Here you are, where you currently exist. Let's say you're single and you're not married and you're not in love with anybody and you want to be. You make that impression on this subconscious, and we already know that this objectifies into 3D reality. Where does 4D reality exist here? I and my Father are one. My Father is greater than I. 4th-dimensional reality exists right here when you make that subconscious impression. That's 4th-dimensional reality. This subconscious impression has to do with any imagining, any thought. All thoughts with feeling are objectified. Every thought with feeling is put into your subconscious. Not every thought, but every thought with feeling. Every thought with feeling is put into your subjective. That gets objectified. So you want to be careful of your thoughts. The one thing we're trying to control in all of this work is our thoughts and our feelings. It's the one main thing. Our thoughts and our feelings. It's them together which is most dangerous. If you figure that if you're in a place where you feel like there's limitations in that place or space, then it's your thoughts and feelings that put you right here. And remember, you kept investigating the outside world, thinking that that's supposed to show you changing by changing your thoughts. Well, if you didn't put the feeling with the thought and subjectively impress your consciousness, your subconscious, then you kept looking at the world for the results. You kept looking for land before sea, as they say. The changes always precede, they don't follow. Looking out here means you're looking for what follows. You have an idea and you think you put the feeling with it and you put it into your subconscious, but you didn't because you didn't believe, and you keep looking out here. You're only stuck in this loop. It's an infinite loop. And the reason you don't see your objectification is because you keep looking out here. That brings you back over here, that you don't believe this works. You don't believe you made the impression. You're actually not making the impression because something you believe doesn't even believe this is possible. Then you go looking at the world. Then you're looking at YouTube. Then you're looking at Google. Then you're finding another teacher. Then you're looking, all the while, I am. Where is your wisdom? Your wisdom is here. I am. Of course, these are closed. I am. What is it I would thoroughly enjoy? Go back, define your first objective. Number 1. That was number 1. Construct an event. Number 2. Immobilize the body and induce the state of consciousness akin to sleep. See the event. Very, very good instructions. All right, hope that makes sense. I'm glad we didn't miss the chance to put our image on the board. We'll see you in the next chapter. Neville Goddard, Out of This World, Chapter 3, Power of Imagination. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8:32. Men claim that a true judgment must conform to the external reality to which it relates. This means that if I, while imprisoned, suggest to myself that I am free and succeed in believing that I am free, it is true that I believe in my freedom, but it does not follow that I am free, for I may be the victim of illusion. But because of my own experiences, I have come to believe in so many strange things that I see little reason to doubt the truth of things that are beyond my experience. The ancient teachers warned us not to judge from appearances because, said they, the truth need not conform to the external reality to which it relates. They claimed that we bore false witness if we imagined evil against another, that no matter how real our belief appears to be, how truly it conforms to the external reality to which it relates, if it does not make free the one of whom we hold the belief, it is untrue and therefore a false judgment. We are called upon to deny the evidence of our senses and to imagine as true of our neighbor that which makes him free. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. To know the truth of our neighbor, we must assume that he is already that which he desires to be. Any concept we hold of another that is short of his fulfilled desire will not make him free and therefore cannot be the truth. Instead of learning my craft in schools where attending courses and seminars is considered a substitute for self-acquired knowledge, my schooling was devoted almost exclusively to the power of imagination. I sat for hours imagining myself to be other than that which my reason and my senses dictated until the imagined states were vivid as reality, so vivid that passers-by became but a part of my imagination and acted as I would have them. By the power of imagination, my fantasy led theirs and dictated to them their behavior and the discourse they held together while I was identified with my imagined state. Man's imagination is the man himself, and the world as imagination sees it is the real world, but it is our duty to imagine all that is lovely and of good rapport. The Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh upon the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh upon the heart. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. In meditation, when the brain grows luminous, I find my imagination endowed with the magnetic power to attract to me whatsoever I desire. Desire is the power of imagination, uses to fashion life about me as I fashion it within myself. I first desire to see a certain person or scene, and then I look as though I were seeing that which I want to see, and the imagined state becomes objectively real. You've closed yourself off to the senses. You've gone into your closet. You've shut the door. Now you're now with the Lord. You're in heaven. You're with your Father. You're in an imaginative state. Listen to the sentence. Desire is the power imagination uses to fashion life about me as I fashion it within myself. Desire. I first desire to see a certain person or scene, and then I look as though I were seeing that which I want to see, and the imagined state becomes objectively real. It objectifies. It becomes reality. I desire to hear, and then I listen as though I were hearing. And the imagined voice speaks that which I dictate as though it had initiated the message. It is very fascinating when that happens. The person talking to you on the other end of the phone is like, it sounds so fresh and so new coming out of their mouth. They really think that they initiated all of it. And you're just sitting there laughing. I mean, I've watched my teacher, excuse me, smile for years, and that fatted cat look, that smiling, just content. And I never knew if she was, treading in the wine press, so to say, because she just had that smile all the time. And it is funny because we never went into the Neville material together. We went into the Seth material very heavily. Including meetup groups weekly at my house and different meetup groups on the weekends and teaching Seth material. It was very, very fun time, many, many years of doing that. But we never got into Neville. But this is very, very interesting because when it does happen and you do hear it verbatim, all you can do is smile. Your ego's not, this isn't about your ego and claiming credit here. This is about seeing this work for yourself. I desire to hear, and then I listen as though I were hearing. And the imagined voice speaks that which I dictate as though it had initiated the message. I could give you many examples to prove my arguments, to prove that these imagined states do become physical realities. But I know that my examples will awaken in all who have not met the like or who are not inclined towards my arguments a most natural incredulity. Nevertheless, experience has convinced me of the truth of the statement. He calleth those things which he not as though they were. He calleth those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. For I have in intense meditation called things that were not seen as though they were, and the unseen not only became seen, but eventually became physical realities. Remember, looking for my bookmark, remember, as we have shown many times, all that is, I am God right here. Your self-concept, my self-concept, a future self-concept, a past self-concept, all these self-concepts are all opportunistic. Any of them you can become. Any self-concept. All of them exist in time, in space, and there is no limitation except the one you believe in your own self-concept. And you can change that self-concept into another self-concept by believing, making the subconscious impression, objectifying the new reality. In this statement, nevertheless, experience has convinced me of the truth of the statement. He calleth those things that which be not as though they are. Excuse me. He calleth those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. For I have in intense meditation called things that were not seen as though they were, and the unseen not only became seen, but eventually became physical realities. It's the same thing we're doing. We're taking in our meditation and we're forming the marriage between the masculine and the feminine, the conscious and the subconscious. And in meditation, we are with our Father in His house. So therefore, we give birth to the Son, our reality, the reality of that which we are in meditation of. When in meditation, you convince your consciousness of that reality. You do this in meditation. You do this in sats. You do this in your daydreams. You do this. The only person you're trying to persuade in this world is you. Nobody is concerned or cares if you're married. Nobody is concerned or cares if you are a millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire. Nobody really cares. Everybody is operating with the three fingers pointing back at themselves. They're so busy pointing at others. I know I'm making a judgment. I can afford one or two, But most people are so busy looking at the outer world, thinking that everything out there is how you do things. When in actuality, it's in here. It's in meditation. It's in your Father's house. It's in the closet with the door closed. When you cut off the senses, in meditation is where the marriage happens. That's where you convince your subconscious of the new impression of what you want to be. You want to be married? You want to have a happy, loving relationship? You impress that into your subconscious. That then becomes the form of the masculine and the feminine, the conscious and the subconscious, which creates an offspring through him, because you notice it goes back through here and it comes out over here. So you're not going to get away with trying to go out here and make a path to, you're not going to go out of your way to use out there. Believe me, everybody's trying. I'm not everybody, excuse me. I withdraw all of my judgmental attitude. You see what my lessons can be sometimes. But if you're trying to use out there to convince yourself of this, you've taken the wrong path. You're actually sinning, so to say. When in actuality, all you need to do is go within. I am. You know I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. What's wrong with using his power for your howness? You don't care about how. Once you know you're happily married and in love, and you know that the birth of that union is going to equal a relationship of love, you don't care how. You don't care about dating apps. There is nothing out here that is going to do it, to give you this. Only you are going to get that by you, by the path within. In the change of your consciousness, it will equal. Now, if you go out here and you push all your dollars and time and you spend, you're not investing. If you go through here, you're investing, because in addition, you're also seeing this work for yourself. You're seeing the conscious. You're seeing you're using your consciousness to create. You're already doing this anyway, but when you become consciously aware of how you do it, that's the path that will equal any self-concept. By this method, first desiring and then imagining that we are experiencing that which we desire to experience, we can mold the future in harmony with our desire. But let us follow the advice of the prophet and think only the lovely and the good. For the imagination waits on us as indifferently, as swiftly when our nature is evil as when it is good. From us spring forth good and evil. I have set before thee this day life and good and death and evil. Deuteronomy 30:15. This previous sentence you must pay attention to. But let us follow the advice of the prophet and think only the lovely and the good. Golden rule. For the imagination waits on us as indifferently and as swiftly when our nature is evil as when it is good. From us spring forth good and evil. Which one do you want to be involved with? You have your choice. You really do have your choice, and you're the only one who makes it. Desire and imagination are the enchanter's wand of fable, and they draw to themselves their own affinities. They break forth best when the mind is in a state akin to sleep. I have written with some care and detail the method I use to enter the dimensionally larger world, but I shall give one more formula for opening the door of the larger world. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men and sealeth their instructions. Job 33:15-16. In dream, we are usually the servant of our vision rather than its master. But in the internal fantasy of dream can be turned into an external reality. In dream, we are usually the servant of our vision rather than its master, but the internal fantasy of dream can be turned into an external reality. In dream, as in meditation, we slip from this world into a dimensionally larger world, and I know that the forms in a dream or in dream are not flat two-dimensional images, but which modern psychologists believe them to be. They are substantial realities of the dimensionally larger world, and I can lay hold of them. I have discovered that if I surprise myself dreaming, I can lay hold of any inanimate or stationary form of the dream, a chair, a table, a stairway, a tree, and command myself to awake. At the command to awake, while firmly holding on to the object of the dream, I am pulled through myself with the distinct feeling of awakening from dream. I awaken in another sphere, holding the object of my dream, to find that I am no longer the servant of my vision, but its master. For I am fully conscious and in control of the movements of my attention. It is in this fully conscious state, when we are in control of the direction of thought, that we call things that are not seen as though they were. In this state, we call things by wishing and assuming the feeling of our wish fulfilled. Unlike the world of three dimensions, where there is an interval between our assumption and its fulfillment, in the dimensionally larger world, there is an immediate realization of our assumption. The external reality instantly mirrors our assumption. Here, there is no need to wait for 4 months till harvest. We look again as though we saw, and lo and behold, the fields are already white to harvest. That is a very fascinating use of creating your reality in the dream state. The dream state definitely has a lot of flexibility, but I have not tried that yet. In dream, we usually are the servant. In dream, we are usually the servant of our vision rather than its master, but the internal fantasy of dream can be turned into an external reality. The method of asking yourself, am I dreaming? Of maybe even scratching your arm in a dream. I've seen different color arms of myself before. I was a very, very dark-skinned person. I've scratched myself. But one of the techniques in learning about dreams from the Seth material I used was asking myself, am I dreaming right now? Because a dream is so real and so vivid, and when you wake up in a dream, when you're lucid, you realize you're in a dream. But at the same time, you're like, okay, this feels too real to be not real, of course, and it's so lucid. You can simply ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? And I love that he's diving into dreams, because dreams are where it's all at. You notice that we all coincidentally have to sleep every night, approximately 8 hours, approximately whatever. But everybody has to sleep. Animals sleep. We sleep. Sharks sleep. Seals sleep. Everything sleeps. Everything is consciousness, don't get me wrong, but everything that we consider conscious, alive, that has instinct, predator or prey, all has a rest period. That rest period, we can easily say, is involved with dreaming. I don't know if sharks dream. I haven't gotten into the study, but I know we dream. I don't know if ants dream. I don't even know if they stop, ants. But anyway, that's a study and video for another day. Point being, back to the concept here, dreams are the doorway for you to get involved with that larger, other dimensionally amazing self. And I don't know how else to describe it. There's so many ways to describe it. He just described it multiple ways, and I'm trying to repeat him, but I'm not doing it too successfully. Your larger dimensional self, your four-dimensional self, is the leader, is the one leading the way. And that four-dimensional self is aware and alive in your dream state. When you're doing your meditation, you're doing your sats, you're just coming back to the four-dimensional self to lead your three-dimensional self. Remember, the three-dimensional self is a shadow of the four-dimensional self. Your dreams and your imagination and your meditation and your imagination, that's where you're in contact with your fourth-dimensional self. Three-dimensional is a shadow of the fourth-dimensional self. Shadow on the wall is the two-dimensional shadow of the three-dimensional self. Dreams is where the fourth dimension is in existence. It's where it exists. Fourth dimension is, and dreams is the same place. That's why you can change so drastically in a dream. You can go from doing this to doing that in completely different things. And people that are passed out of your life, you'll meet them. I've met my parents many, many times. There's just So much to behold when you get involved with dreams. It's wonderful. But remember, that's like an infinite door you open, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, look at all this. Remembering, by the way we're studying this, that's fourth dimensional reality right there. Anything's possible instantly. I had a student one time in one of my classes, and she was in a very lucid dream, fully awake in the dream, and there was a big field of dirt, and she says, "Well, Gilbert says we were studying this in class, and she says in the dream state, she says, well, Gilbert says if I'm creating all this, then why isn't it all just grass?" And boom, immediately grass just grew like very thick, heavy, tall grass. And then she goes, well, if I'm creating all this, then let me pull some of this grass. And she's sitting there pulling the grass. And the way she described it in class was so vivid, so real. And she had this skill set to fully see it vividly, which she did well. And some of her dreams when she brought back to class were really amazing. But it is something you open up and you get used to. It's a skill set like any other skill set. Learn to play guitar. How do you hold those chords? You got to hold them a certain way and repeat, repeat, repeat. So this is the same thing. Writing down your dreams starts with the notepad and the pen. Suggestion you'll remember them. Wake up, write down anything. That dream will get bigger and bigger. I was looking at a dream log yesterday that from a long time ago where I was killed. My teacher actually killed me in a dream. She harpooned me. I opened up a file folder. I was throwing out some old stuff, some old music notation. But this, I opened it up and there's this dream, and I go, oh, I remember this one. It was a 2-page, writing it down, 2 pages. And she harpooned me in the dream state. This harpoon went through me, and I believe my students at the time and a bunch of people were right in front of us, and I was on this dock, and I got this harpoon in me. And then at the moment, I definitely felt myself transitioning, passing away, dying, whatever you want to call it. So I definitely transformed, died, and I'm like, wow, she got me good. Boom, right through me, a big harpoon. And then what immediately happened is there was like 7 people right in front of me. I just reread this dream yesterday, so it's very vivid too when I think back. But I immediately had 7 simultaneous conversations with these people. I was having a complete communication with all 7 in the same instant, in the dream, in this very, very lucid dream, where I've just died, which obviously proves there is no death. Obviously, number 1, but number 2 is that your creativity just keeps rolling. Because what plane or what place did I go to have 7 simultaneous conversations in one instant? There were some other old classmates, old people I was on a baseball team with in there, and just some different choppy, weird things that you just got to write this stuff down. And as I was rereading this yesterday, it was like jumping into such different fragments that I was like, wow, how does that fit that and that fit that? The time and space is completely brought into a one place when you're in the dream state. The opportunity for anything, in my Father's house are many mansions, and the opportunity for anything inside of a dream is infinitely available. So what you desire and you impress upon your subconscious, you're impressing upon your dreaming self. In that reality, the dreaming fourth dimensional reality, it becomes a fact. And since we're only a shadow here, it can't but objectify. It's going to become. When you make that impression here, and in your dream state, boom, 3 dimensions is a shadow of it. I really believe that Neville adds quite a bit of dimension to the Seth material. Again, I've come from that body of work, I don't know, at least 25 years with my teacher. We were doing fairs and doing all kinds of things with the Seth material and classes and meetups and teaching it and all this other stuff. And then also for me, 3 years after she left the party, I got into Ho'oponopono, as I mentioned, kind of clearing this up a little bit. That'd be 28 years of Seth focused, and then 2 years of just Ho'oponopono. And if you haven't looked that up, wow, that is really I thought that was the cherry until I met the Neville material at the 30-year mark. Now, 3 years later, I think the Neville material, as I'm trying to get to here, is the perfect. When you go from the Seth material, then you get in your Ho'oponopono. And there's a lot of other studies, don't get me wrong, but these were main bodies of work that I would deeply, deeply dive into. The Neville material allows the maturity of the Seth material, in my opinion, because especially what he's talking about here with dreams and all the deep work I did with dreams in the Seth material Now I can take Neville's visions and transformations and understandings and really kind of flesh them out because of the experiences I've had over 33 years. It is very, very good melding. These two bodies of work really well together, I have to say. Okay, back to the dreaming world. In this dimensionally larger world, ye shall not need to fight. Set yourselves, stand ye still, and see the salvation of the Lord with you. True Chronicles 20:17. And because that greater world is slowly passing through our three-dimensional world, remember, the greater world, the dream world, the fourth dimensional world is passing through here. Because that greater world is slowly passing through our three-dimensional world, we can, by the power of imagination, mold our world in harmony with our desire. Look as though you saw, listen as though you heard, stretch forth your imaginary hand as though you touched, and your assumptions will harden into facts. I don't know if you need more than that. Repeating. And because that greater world is slowly passing through our three-dimensional world, we can, by the power of imagination, mold our world in harmony with our desire. Look as though you saw. Meditation, falling asleep, see it. See yourself first person, by the way. Very important tip. Look as though you saw, listen as though you heard, stretch forth your imaginary hand as though you touched. Always involve touching. Always involve hearing. It's not hard. And your assumptions will harden into facts. What are facts? Official fiction. Facts are nothing more than official fiction. What is a vision? Fiction, because you don't see it. To you it seems, oh, I can't believe that. It's not here. I'm not actually getting married. I haven't met anybody yet. Wait a minute. Facts are only official fiction. Your assumptions, which is your fantasy, hardens into facts, becomes a shadow of the fantasy. The fantasy's first. I don't know about you, but my wife and I both had these remarks on our grade school report cards. Spends too much time in imagination. If you had that problem when you were a kid, then you're in the right track, all right? You want to use that skill. You want to reawaken that skill. To those who believe that a true judgment must conform to the external reality to which it relates, this will be foolishness and a stumbling block. But I preach and practice the fixing in consciousness of that which man desires to realize. I preach and practice the fixing, let me see here, the fixing in consciousness of that which man desires to realize. Experience convinces me that fixed attitudes of mind which do not conform to the external reality to which they relate and are therefore called imaginary, things which are not, will nevertheless bring to naught things that are. Let me repeat that. Okay. But I preach and practice the fixing in consciousness of that which man desires to realize. Preach and practice the fixing in consciousness of that which man desires to realize. Experience convinces me that fixed attitudes of mind which do not conform to the external reality to which they relate and are therefore called imaginary, things which are not, will nevertheless bring to naught things that are. Imagination creates reality. I do not wish to write a book of wonders, but rather to turn man's mind back to the one and only reality that the ancient teachers worshipped as God. All that was said of God was in reality said of man's consciousness, so we may say that according as it is written, he that glorieth, let him glory in his own consciousness. No man needs help to direct him in the application of this law of consciousness. No man needs help to direct him in the application of this law of consciousness. I am is the self-definition of the absolute. The I am is the self-definition of the absolute. Out here, no. In here, yes. I am is the self-definition of the absolute. All your answers are not found outside of you. They're found inside. How else do you tie into a desire and find out what you really like, what you really want to experience? You take that desire, you impress your subconscious, you objectify it into reality. This is living in heaven. Heaven's here. It's not out here. It's not out here. It's in here. The root of which everything grows. I am the vine. Let me repeat this very short paragraph. Now, no man needs help to direct him in the application of this law of consciousness. I am is the self-definition of the absolute. The root out of which everything grows. I am the vine. I am the vine. The root out of which I am, everything grows. What is your answer to the eternal question? Who am I? Your answer determines the part you play in the world's drama. Your answer, that is, your concept of self, need not conform to the external reality to which it relates. Now, we're going to get into revision in a forthcoming book here, but it's so powerful. You can go find Neville's lectures on revision, pruning the vine. The idea here is, in my mind flashed while I was reading that one short piece, that what if your parents taught you this in third, second grade? The idea is, who am I? You want to answer, who am I? They're looking down at you saying, whatever you're doing, you always want to have on your mind, who am I right now? Who am I being? Now, on the other side of my mind, my reason stepped in while I'm having that flash of brilliance. Wait a minute, I didn't experience that, but then the correction came very fast. Wait a minute, you did experience it because you can revise. You can imagine yourself. It doesn't matter what your experience was. It doesn't matter parents, no parents. It doesn't. Nothing matters except for you applying your imagination. That's it. So in this flash, I had the idea. You can easily revise when you were in second grade, your parents telling you, answer the question while you're playing today, who am I? Who am I being on the playground? Who am I being in the classroom? Now, I had the tendency for Klaus clownship. I was consistently clowning around, getting laughs, being full of humor, on full speed all the time. But I can see if I revise that self, in whichever grade, because I was consistently doing that, I can inject with revision that into my past self. What does that do? That creates a different self-concept, because if that second grade experience is here and I revise this second grade experience, I'm jumping ahead here for the fun of it. I can revise this second grade experience. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I being? Who do I want to be? I put that backwards in this supposed concept of time. All time is now. There's now. I put that into my second grade self. What does it do to this self? It completely changes your current reality, because you revised how you remember that second grade self walking around with the question on his mind all day. Who am I? So right now, what comes up within me is the definition which I like, because I answered it so long ago in my revised memory. So in my current reality, I am. I am. You can't block it. So I'm jumping into revision real quick here as a commercial, but it is very powerful, especially when you weave in everything we've talked about with time. It's all now. What is your answer to the eternal question, who am I? Your answer determines the part you play in the world's drama. Your answer, that is, your concept of self, need not conform to the external reality to which it relates. This great truth is revealed in the statement, let the weak say, I am strong. Joel 3:10. Incidentally, I am a teacher. I am a teacher. I am a teacher. I was giving my teachers hell when I grew up. I was giving them a very difficult, challenging time, because I was a loaded pistol going off in every different direction when I was a kid. So when I go back there and I say, who am I have a ninth grade yearbook. And in that class grade, we were asked, what do we want to be when we grow up? And we all filled out a little 3x5 card and we turned it in. I think it was in art class. I don't know why I have the memory in art class. And the yearbook comes out and my name's right there. And I looked, I have it on the shelf, this yearbook still. And it says psychiatrist. it might say psychologist, either one. Looking back at all the experiences, let's say that's second grade and that's ninth grade, how did I know that I wanted to do something in the field which had to do with the mind in the ninth grade when I couldn't know unless all of this is happening in the same moment? So to go to the shelf, or I could bring it, I could scan it, I could add it to the video, whatever, but the point is it's there. Why is it there when my favorite thing to do is to see how this works, unveil what's going on here, and share that knowledge to make us all powerful? That's really literally the bottom line of what turns me on. That's my go-to situation consistently. Ask anybody who knows me, yes, that's exactly what I'm about. So how would I know in my current self-concept that in ninth grade I would have that answer, or in my current self-concept that in second grade I would be full of the question and answer, who am I? See, I just sent that there just now. There's plenty of science fiction movies that dabble with this concept, but a lot of them don't really kind of close the door or conclude how this works, but it works that simply. In your present self-concept, you can, and we're going to get into this later, you can revise to the point where all your past selves, you can revise their experiences. So what that does to them is it bolsters all of them in your supposed timeline looking back. Let's say this is now 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. That one revision will bolster and change this existence, and your current one, because they're all now. It's very, very potent stuff. It was also heavily in the Seth material. We're moving on. Look back over the good resolutions with which many past New Years are encumbered. They lived a little while and then they died. Why? Because they were severed, because they were severed from their root. Assume that you are that which you want to be. Experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh. Were you already that which you want to be? Remain faithful to your assumption, so that you define yourself as that which you have assumed. You define yourself to that which you have assumed. Things have no life if they are severed from their roots. And our consciousness, our I amness, is the root of all that springs in our world. Who am I? I am, fill in your blank. Quiet, go in your closet, shut the door. I am, let it rise to the surface. Ask before you fall asleep, who am I? When I wake up, I will know who I am. The first thing that floats to the top of my mind when I wake up will be the answer I am looking for when I ask myself right now, who am I? Who am I? No, do not put what, how, where, forget everything. One question, who am I? Who am I? You're falling asleep. When I wake up, the first thing that forms in my mind will be the answer. And then, who am I? Who am I? Fall asleep. When you wake up, don't be surprised. Right after your awareness of being, it already is, you load in your self-concept right here. Instantly, the first thoughts that come to mind, right away, don't judge, just be willing to hear. Be ears that hear. All of a sudden, that answer rises right to the top, like cream. Like cream to the top of milk. It just comes right up, naturally. You get the answer you were seeking. There is you defining, who am I? Now then, you make assumptions about who you are. If you're not having that reality in your self-concept, and that who am I answer is something completely different, let's say it's here, but you know what it looks like, you now have the opportunity to have a focus and start making the impression onto your subconscious of that definition. Who am I? I am. Now you can make these impressions. Now you can stay focused. Now you have a target. Now you have the word goal. Now you can make a vision board. Now you have self-definition, which is very, very, very valuable. Know thyself. If ye believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins. John 8:24. That is, if I do not believe that I am already that which I desire to be, Then I remain as I am and die in my present concept of self. That means dying in your sins. There is no power outside of the consciousness of man to resurrect and make alive that which man desires to experience. What a sentence. There is no power outside of the consciousness of man to resurrect and make alive that which man desires to experience. No power outside the consciousness of man. Here's outside the consciousness of man. Here's the consciousness of man. There's no power outside the consciousness of man to resurrect and make alive that which man desires to experience. All the desire in the world, without going through your consciousness, to try and get to your creation of your new self-concept, all the power out here is none of it is going to resurrect what it is you desire to be. We've already said this, except for through here. Again, there's no power outside of the consciousness of man to resurrect and make alive that which man desires to experience. That man who is accustomed to call up at will whatever images he pleases will be, by virtue of the power of his imagination, master of his fate. I am the resurrection, and I am the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. John 11:25. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Wow. Out of This World, Chapter 3, Power of Imagination. Is that a doozy or what? That is a great one. There are so many favorite pieces in this one chapter. I mean, you could reread that all day. That is a great chapter. Watch this again if you got something out of it. Leave a comment if you got something out of it. Are you applying this? Are you figuring out your I amness? All right. We'll see you in the next chapter. Neville Goddard, Out of This World, Chapter 4, No one to change but self. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. John 17:19. The ideal we serve and strive to attain could never be evolved from us, were it not potentially involved in our nature. It is now my purpose to retell and to emphasize an experience of mine printed by me 2 years ago. I believe these quotations from The Search will help us to understand the operation of the law of consciousness and show us that we have no one to change but self. The Search is also in another playlist on the channel. I believe it's just one video, so you want to check it out. Once in an idle interval at sea, I meditated on the perfect state and wondered what I would be were I of two pure eyes to behold iniquity. If to me all things were pure and were I without condemnation. As I became lost in this fiery brooding, I found myself lifted above the dark environment of the senses. So intense was feeling, I felt myself a being of fire dwelling in a body of air. Voices as from a heavenly chorus with the exaltation of those who had been conquerors in a conflict with death were singing, "He is risen, He is risen." And intuitively I knew they meant me. Then I seemed to be walking in the night. I soon came upon a scene that might have been the ancient pool of Bethesda. For in this place lay a great multitude of impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, waiting not for the moving of the water as of tradition, but waiting for me. As I came near, without thought or effort on my part, they were, one after the other, molded as by the magician of the beautiful. Eyes, hands, feet, all missing members were drawn from some invisible reservoir and molded in harmony with that perfection which I felt springing within me. When all were made perfect, the chorus exulted, "It is finished." Then the scene dissolved and I awoke. I knew this vision was the result of my intense meditation upon the idea of perfection. For my meditations invariably bring about union with the state contemplated. I had been so completely absorbed within the idea that for a while I had become what I contemplated. And the high purpose with which I had for that moment identified myself drew the companionship of high things and fashioned the vision in harmony with my inner nature. The ideal with which we are united works by association of ideas to awaken 1,000 moods to create a drama in keeping with the central idea. My mystical experiences have convinced me that there is no way to bring about the outer perfection we seek other than by transformation of ourselves. I was just talking to somebody on the phone, a friend of mine, and he was telling me about this YouTube channel that he watches, and the gal is interpreting, he hasn't sent me the channel yet, but somehow she was telling these gals who have these opinions of men and why they can't meet one or what their qualifications are, and etc. And I was telling him that because on that channel, some of these gals were claiming that the perfect man had to be 6'4", he had to be a certain look, he had to have a certain kind of income, he had to have a certain kind of bank account, etc. And I retorted that until any of these ladies are willing to change within themselves their own consciousness about men, they're going to be on the outside continually chasing their tail. They're going to be running in circles constantly because they're on the outside and they haven't conferred within. They haven't realized that I and my Father are one. They haven't gotten to that place. And they sound pretty far from it, but anybody can, whenever they choose, arrive at that place and start to go that direction, because that's where the truth and the answers are. And that's where you can change your consciousness. And then that's where you focus on your desire, you impress your subconscious, then you behold it in your 3D world. But the bringing up of that idea that he had about that channel was fascinating. So he's going to send it to me, because it sounds like that gal is doing some good interpretations, because they're giving these gals the same business I would. Anyway, my mystical experiences have convinced me that there is no way to bring about the outer perfection we seek other than by the transformation of ourselves. As soon as we succeed in transforming ourselves, the world will melt magically before our eyes and reshape itself in harmony with that which our transformation affirms. Wonderful. In the divine economy, nothing is lost. We cannot lose anything save by descent from the sphere where the thing has its natural life. There is no transforming power in death, and whether we are here or there, we fashion the world that surrounds us by this intensity of our imagination and feeling, and we illuminate or darken our lives by the concepts we hold of ourselves. Man, this is a heavy, heavy, very powerful sentence. That was something that kept reminding me during my Seth classes. It just kept reminding me that we're going to miss this, that after we leave this party, I call this the party. You ever go to a party and everybody's having a good time, and all of a sudden someone leaves the party and you don't really know they're gone, but they are gone. They just left and you didn't know it. The party's still thriving and moving along, even though they're absent. Your friend split, left at another time, and you didn't even know they were gone for hours. That's the same thing I call leaving the party, when someone leaves this reality. So they left the party because this is a big party. Everything we're experiencing is one big party. We all are players in that party. We all have a role. We all have desire. We all have self-concepts. We all have places in the party. But listen to this sentence. In the divine economy, nothing is lost. We cannot lose anything save by descent from the sphere where the thing has its natural life. There is no transforming power in death. And whether we are here in the party or there out of the party, we fashion the world that surrounds us by the intensity of our imagination and feeling. And we illuminate or darken our lives by the concepts we hold of ourselves. Who am I? Right? What self-concept are you running this morning? Here you are, God, I am all that is. It's also you, because here comes your self-concept. Here's another self-concept, another. They are infinitely available, and they're in every single color, if you can imagine. Every single flavor, every single financial level, every single romance level, every single love level, every single freedom level. All self-concepts exist. Excuse me. So, repeating the sentence, there is no transforming power in death. So when you are done with your self-concept, and you're meeting what Neville's going to talk about when we cross over into the promise, we're going to get into, well, let's not go there yet. Everything here is restoration. You're restoring from one self-concept to another self-concept. Okay? I know I'm crossing the line a little bit here with the promise, but the idea is you're constantly changing. Your capacity is always the ability to change whatever you are as you self-conceive yourself to be. You can be who you are today with your income, your love, your health, your freedom. You can change all of those by changing that concept, impressing your subconscious, and then it objectifies into a new reality. And this is you in your new reality here. Any and all of this is flexible and open to change. There's no transforming power in death, and whether we are here or there, whether we are here in this party or there not in this party, which we can't cross that yet. It's the idea, see, because when you leave a self-concept, you're only returning right here, because everything is just consciousness. Let's just deal with it now. When you leave the self-concept and you no longer are in the party, as I say, you've only returned here. And whether you instantly arrive again, or here, or whatever, you're going to arrive somewhere. You're never not in flux. Your awareness of being, your awareness of I am, is a consistent and an always and an is. Because you leave the party of this self-concept doesn't mean you leave this out here. You're always here. You're always home. Home is where you are all the time. You go into a self-concept and you illusion yourself, you elude yourself from that reminder that you are always home. Then you go out here looking for answers. You forget your home has the answers. So there's no transforming power in the absence of your self-concept. If you think ending your self-concept is going to transform you, there is no transforming power in just jumping by the act of unaliveness. There's no transforming power in death, and whether we are here or there, we fashion the world that surrounds us by the intensity of our imagination and feeling, and we illuminate or darken our lives by the concepts we hold of ourselves. So I might as well touch on this concept of, when he gets into the promise, Neville discusses restoration versus resurrection. So restoration, let's change what we're seeing here into a different image. This is I am all that is God. Now this is all the different lives that are lived by God. He made us in His image so that He would become us and we would become Him. He would forget who He was by becoming us so that we could wake up and remember that we are Him. So we're all different lives, okay? In the concept of restoration, when one life ends, according to Neville, let's say you're 95 to 105 years old and you've got an old, used, worn body, and you leave the body, you leave the party, you wake up, according to Neville, again instantly as a 20-year-old with the same challenges, the same self-concept, similarly, that you're working with these certain challenges that you are all about in your life. You wake up in another, basically new vehicle with the same challenges that you had here. This one's gone, but you are restored. And Neville knew of this because he would meet these people in his dream state. He would meet his father, his mother, and other people who've passed away. And this is called restoration, when you re-arrive. But the promise, and what Neville talks about there, is what's called resurrection. Resurrection is when you're done with this entirely. You've done many restorations, and you're working on your last trip here. And so your last trip into this system is when you're going to be doing your work like Neville did, and he was well aware that he was in a state of resurrection, potential resurrection, not restoration, where you're continuing back into the wheel of life. His concept of his last life, which would be Neville Goddard, he lived it and satisfied what he came to do, and he even spoke about it in many lectures, that his work was done. I think his work was done when he unveiled the idea of revision. That's where the real bomb dropped. Revision is the most wonderful, freeing concept, and we're going to get into it. But restoration is when you're going back into the system. Resurrection is when you're done with the system and you're graduating. And who knows? I don't know. You don't know. Resurrection might mean just another system where it's a more advanced situation. We don't know this. And, I think we can intuitively pick up on that like Neville did. But this system and its challenges, like Seth in the Seth material said, this system that we are in, this co-creative reality that we're co-creating, he said this is one of the most difficult systems to go into, because only the bravest souls go into this system that we are in. You might want to read the Seth material. It's it works with the Neville material quite a bit. It's very good. But Seth said this is one of the most difficult, and only the bravest souls dare go here, because the challenges we have here are not for the faint of heart. And it's right there in the first sentence. There's no transforming power in death, whether we are here or there. We fashion the world that surrounds us by the intensity of our imagination and feeling. We illuminate or darken our lives by the concepts we hold of ourselves. It was a different point I wanted to make. But when you're here, I think it was previously on the page, but when you're here, you want to realize that your lessons here are the most valuable that they can be offered. Your lessons that you're going through right now, and as mountainous as they seem like giants, and you seem like the grasshopper. The ability, here's the point. The ability to learn them here is the point why you're here, is that if you learn them in this classroom, the system we are in, then this is the best place you can learn them. Because you're just going to restore, eventually you're going to learn the lesson. We're all working towards the promise. I'm giving a massive commercial towards the promise, which will be coming up. But we're all working towards waking up with the promise. That's the idea of what Neville put forth. And so, learning why you're here is the point. It behooves you to get your lesson. Take your lickings. Realize that you are the conscious co-creator of your existence. I say co-creator because he's also created you. He made you in his image, forgot he was him while you, so that you would wake up remembering you're him. So it is a co-creation of sorts, isn't it? But if this lesson is so difficult to remember, then that's the lesson we need to be focused on, is to remember I am. It is really that simple. I mean, it sounds simple, but when you're heavily focused out here, it's not that easy, because you're not going into your closet and closing the door. Okay, moving on. Nothing is more important to us than our conception of ourselves. And especially is this true of our concept of the dimensionally greater one within us, as I was just describing. All right? Those who help or hinder us, whether they know it or not, are the servants of that law which shapes outward circumstances in harmony with our inner nature. It is our conception of ourselves which frees or constrains us, though it may use material agencies to achieve its purpose. Because life molds the outer world to reflect the inner arrangement of our minds, there is no way of bringing about the outer perfection we seek other than by the transformation of ourselves. No help cometh from without. The hills to which we lift our eyes are those of an inner range. It is thus to our own consciousness that we must turn as to the only reality, the only foundation on which all phenomena can be explained. We can rely absolutely on the justice of this law to give us only that which is the nature of ourselves. To attempt to change the world before we change our concept of ourselves is to struggle against the nature of things. Trying to change the world out there before you change before you change our concept of ourselves, not our nature. Our nature is a totally different point. The concept. This is a self-concept. We're back to the concept viewpoint. This is where we are. This is where we want to be. To attempt to change the world out here before we change our concept of ourselves is to struggle against the nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an inner change. Not interchange, but that kind of does make sense. Inner change. As with, so without. As within, so without. As within, so without. As within, so without. As within, so without. I am not advocating philosophical indifference when I suggest that we should imagine ourselves as already that which we want to be, living in a mental atmosphere of greatness, rather than using physical means and arguments to bring about the desired change. Everything we do, accompanied by a change of consciousness, is but a futile readjustment of surfaces. I said that wrong, excuse me. Everything we do unaccompanied by a change of consciousness is but futile readjustment of surfaces. However we toil or struggle, we can receive no more than our assumptions affirm. To protest against anything which happens to us is to protest against the law of our being and our rulership over our destiny. Very, very interesting sentence. To protest against anything which happens to us is to protest against the law of our being and our rulership over our own destiny. So if you have the capacity to change your self-concept, impress your subconscious, and beget the new reality, the new self-concept, then anything that happens to this self-concept and you protest against that, you're protesting against what you created. You're the creator of this self-concept. He made you in his image so that you would be him and he would become you awake as him. So you are the creator of your own reality. Your imagination creates reality. For you to protest against anything that happens against you or to you, you're protesting against you. You're the creator. Back to that finger with the one pointing away and three pointing back at you. The circumstances of my life are too closely related to my conception of myself not to have been formed by my own spirit from some dimensionally larger storehouse of my being. Oh my gosh. Let me read that again because it got me good. The circumstances of my life are too closely related to my conception of myself not to have been formed by my own spirit from some dimensionally larger storehouse of my being. Conception of myself by my own spirit from the dimensionally larger storehouse of my being, my awareness of being. If there is pain to me in these happenings, I should look within myself for the cause. For I am moved here and there and made to live in a world in harmony with my concept of myself. Intense meditation brings about a union with the state contemplated. And during this union, we see visions, have experiences, and behave in keeping with our change of consciousness. This shows us that a transformation of consciousness will result in a change of environment and behavior. That is so much a wonderful statement and paragraph, very small paragraph, which I will repeat because it is profound. Intense meditation. I am, close your eyes, go home, close the closet, go in your closet, shut the door, you're in secret. Intense meditation brings about a union with the state contemplated. You're contemplated your desire of what you want to be. Intense meditation, you're making real that fourth dimensional reality. And during this union, we see visions, have experiences, and behave in keeping with our change of consciousness. That which you're visioning, you're keeping in line with it. This shows us that a transformation of consciousness will result in a change of environment and behavior. Once you beget this new self-concept and you give birth to that son from this union of your conscious and subconscious self, they form a union, the male and the female, and they give birth to the son. This is the objectification of your new reality. Let's say you're working on, you want to be married and you're single and you change your consciousness. You finally make that impression. You all of a sudden go on a date and you meet that person. The behavior you have here is definitely different than the behavior you have here. This shows us that a transformation of consciousness will result in a change of environment and behavior. Your environment here and your behavior here will be different because you changed it in your meditation. You made the impression into your consciousness. Your behavior and environment will change. All wars prove that violent emotions are extremely potent in precipitating mental arrangements. Every great conflict has been followed by an era of materialism and greed in which the ideals for which the conflict ostensibly was waged are submerged. This is inevitable because war evokes hate, which impels a descent in consciousness from the plane of the ideal to the level where the conflict is waged. If we would become as emotionally aroused over our ideals as we become over our dislikes, we would ascend to the plane of our ideal as easily as we now descend to the level of our hates. Do you have a social media account? Do you see anybody emotionally aroused over their dislikes? Do you see other videos on YouTube or anywhere, it doesn't matter, any social media, or even hear it in conversation at the water cooler? If we would become as emotionally aroused over our ideals as we become over our dislikes, we would ascend to the plane of our ideal as easily as we now descend to the level of our hates. If you are here and you're a female and you want to be in love and married and you're single, it doesn't help you to have a hatred against men if a man is your object of your marriage that you want to be in your new reality. You're a female, you're single, and you want to be with a man and be married. Let's use that as an example. All relationships are masculine and feminine, so we're just using the words here to differentiate the opposite of the sex you are. If you're masculine, you're looking for a feminine. If you're feminine, you're looking for a masculine. You're female, single, and you want to be married to a man. It doesn't help you to have a hatred of men. It doesn't help you to have all men are negative, negative, negative. Whatever those three words you say after someone says all men are, whatever you're saying is what you're experiencing. It doesn't help you to try and impress your subconscious when you have a hatred at the same time. There's emotional charge behind this one. There's an anchor right here. That emotional charge, remember feeling and thought together? That emotional charge is keeping you wedded to that anchorage. You're stuck in port right here. Your ship is not going to sail up to this elevation. If we would become as emotionally aroused over our ideals as we become over our dislikes, we would ascend to the plane of our ideal as easily as we now descend to the level of our hates. You can't hate men and want to be married to a man. How? How's that going to work? You can't hate that which you want to love. If you're busy hating, where's the love going to come from? Where are you going to bring the love? Where does it have space to even play? Love and hate have a magical transforming power, and we grow through their exercise into the likeness of what we contemplate. We intensify hatred, we create in ourselves the character we imagine in our enemies. By intensity of hatred, we create in ourselves the character we imagine in our enemies. By intensity of hatred, we create in ourselves the character we imagine in our enemies. Qualities die for want of attention, so the unlovely states might best be rubbed out by imagining beauty for ashes and joy for mourning, rather than by direct attacks on the state from which we would be free. Whatsoever things are lovely and of good rapport, think on these things. It doesn't matter what's in your environment. It doesn't matter what your senses are telling you. Think on these things, lovely and of good rapport. Beauty for asses, joy for mourning. That's mourning. Beauty for ashes, joy for mourning. Whatsoever things are lovely and of good rapport, think on these things, for we become that which we are in rapport. There's nothing to change but our concept of self. As soon as we succeed in transforming self, our world will dissolve and reshape itself in harmony with that which our change affirms. There's nothing to change but our concept of self. That's it. As soon as we succeed in transforming self, again, one of the reasons why know thyself is a very important phrase. As soon as we succeed in transforming self, our world will dissolve. This will dissolve and reshape itself in harmony with that which our change affirms. Oh my goodness, what a powerful, powerful last chapter of that book. Out of this world, chapter 4, no one to change but self. There's a lot in there that's wonderful. Each chapter just gets better and better and better than the last. I'm telling you, one of my favorite pieces right here. There's no transforming power in death, and whether we are here or there, we fashion in the world what surrounds us by the intensity of our imagination and feeling, and we illuminate or darken our lives by the concepts we hold of ourselves. Again, I was having those Seth classes for many years, and it always dawned on me that while we were in this party, in this dimension, in this reality, whatever we want to call it, it's the best place we can learn the lessons we want to learn, because when we're not there, it's going to be difficult to try and learn that same lesson. I just have an overwhelming intuitive feeling of that. So whatever you might, if you want to awaken your conscious awareness, follow the videos, because all we're doing is reading Neville's works. Follow his instruction. You will awaken to your awareness of being, and that will give you the ability to be aware of that there's another self behind the self you are. Here's your concept of self, and here's the awareness of being right behind you. When you first wake up, the awareness of being's there first, then it's covered by your self-concept. When you first wake up, there's your awareness of being, then your self-concept floods in right away and gives you all the definition of your challenges of life or your successes. Everything floods in after. So what we want to do is become aware of our awareness of being, learn this law of impressing your subconscious and upgrading your life. That's what we're here to do, is ascend. But learning this lesson and applying this law will also get us closer to realizing the law, which we're going to get into in another book. What a wonderful book, out of this world. Wow. Whatever you found as a good transforming part of that chapter, leave a comment. Let's talk about it. It's all fun stuff. All right, we'll see you in the next book.